Have you heard of this cool vaccine going around? I think it's worth a shot. This is Sexy Dad Jokes.
This is Jonny Spazz. Welcome to Sexy Dad Jokes. Hey, Benjamin, do you know what vaccines and cacti have in common?
Hey there, Jonny Spazz. What do they have in common?
They can be a little pricky.
Nice one, Jonny Spazz. I get your point. Hey, guess what? I was hanging out with Square 50's guy the other day.
Ooh, how'd that go?
Well, I told him I had a great vaccine joke, but that he probably wouldn't get it.
Ouch. Good one, Ben. Way to stick it to him.
Hey, guys, I was at the bar last night, imagine that, and I asked the bartender if I could get a shot.
Oh yeah, Merz? Whiskey or tequila?
Well, neither. He said, of course, pharmacy right across the street gives them out for free.
That's really, it's very thrifty of your bartender.
He's looking out. He's
Best
watching out for me.
card.
He knows. He knows. He gets a bigger tip that way.
He doesn't want the tip. He wants the whole thing.
Oh, goodness.
Well, hello there, SDJ crew.
Hey, Square 50's guy.
We're 50's guy.
Say, do you know why nurses can be good boxers?
Why?
Because they're really good at jabbing people.
Oh boy, that's a real knockout punch of a pun there, Square 50's guy. Okay, all together now. Welcome to Sexy Dad Jokes. Hello everyone and welcome back once again to Sexy Dad Jokes. It's been a while since you last heard from us. Sexy Dad Jokes is about our journeys to be good men, guardians of our families, protectors of our tribes, leaders in our communities, empowerers of those around us. And over the past few months, we've all had incredible experiences on each of our own personal journeys. This is actually the first time we've checked in with each other since our last episode way back in June. We're going to be pretty open as you get to listen to us in real time, catch up, and we'll try to extrapolate lessons from our experiences to help others on our everlasting quest to be better men. We're not exactly in a place right now where we can promise anything in terms of next episodes. We're going to put stuff out as we're able, but we're grateful for you coming along with us on this wild ride.
And don't forget, if you want to keep hearing more from us, help us spread the word about Sexy Dad Jokes. Tell your friends. Follow us online and share our post. SDJ is kind of like the end of that movie, Elf. You need to believe in Santa for us to have our own magical powers.
Yes, best Christmas movie ever.
You know, quick fun fact. I saw that with Vinny the Knife in 2004 when it came out in the theories in Ala Moana Mall. No,
Whoa.
IAM Mall.
Whoa.
Yeah, throwback.
Extremely obscure, trivial fact. Thank you, Jonny.
Relative to no one but Johnny's
Ben.
life.
Ben knows that. Sorry.
As always, I'm Ben Jammin, along with Jonny Spazz,
Hell.
Mike Merz,
What's up?
and Josh Richards.
Woo! What's going on?
And we can't ever forget about our ever lovable Square 50's guy, the one, the only, Richard Richards III Jr.
Hey there, boyos. It's good to see you again. Life without sexy dad jokes is like the milkman without a cow. How dare you leave us hanging for so long?
Oh, Richard. You know, I'm sure you've had your Chesterfield cigarettes to keep you company. But Yes, it's oh so good to be back together again. We're tanned, we're rested, and we're ready to give you all that sexy dad joke goodness.
I don't know about tan. I got more freckles. But is it finger looking good?
Oh, I'm sure it is for somebody. To each their own.
Don't worry, I've got your 7 herbs and spices right here.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about something on everybody's minds, COVID vaccines, and more specifically about those not getting vaccinated, or as some would call them, the so-called anti-vaxxers. Now, I'm vaccinated. What I really want to talk about today is, yes, we absolutely need as many people to get vaccinated as possible. But for me, this episode is more for the vaccinated in some ways than it is for the unvaxxed. As we talk to our friends and family about this, what the vaccinated folks really shouldn't be doing is being argumentative, judgmental, holier than thou. Because to ultimately be successful, we need to engage in conversation in a respectful way. No one's going to go and get vaccinated because they're being ridiculed.
Yeah, you can't make fun of somebody into getting the vaccination or judge them based on, because even if you don't agree with them not getting vaccinated, you don't know everybody's circumstances.
Yeah, this ain't high school. Nobody wants peer pressure.
Yeah.
And being aware of that, being sensitive to it is ultimately the way that we're all going to get along. And so we're going to get into all this. But first, let's get everyone up to speed on what's been happening with the 4 of us. So, fellas, how's it been going? I know Jonny just turned 40, the big 40. You had your big birthday yesterday. Yes.
Yeah, I did.
And
I feel old.
You know, Johnny, they say the first 40 years of childhood are the most difficult.
It's so true. It's so true. I am a Toys R Us kid. They killed my hero.
He's trying to come back. He's trying to come back.
Poor Jeffrey. He gone.
We're all tore up about that, Johnny. Huge.
I have a lot of nostalgia with those memories. Sorry, Ben.
Jonny Spazz, as you turn the big 40, you also are starting a brand new job, kind of a dream job of sorts.
Yeah, it's insane. I feel like I got that job for my birthday, actually. I felt like, so on a Monday before we started school on a Tuesday, and on that Monday night, I got a call from one of the school people in charge, and they said, "We want to offer you this position." I was like, what? So yeah, that was very interesting. So I hit the ground running on that. So I am now a elementary school music teacher.
Wow.
Which is like,
all right.
it goes back to our origin story, Ben, where it's like we became friends through music, and it's like to be able to do that. Like I wake up every day and I do music all day, and then I get to mess with little kids, and oh my goodness, we were doing a lesson, and they had to guess what meter the song was in. So it's either a meter of 2 or 3 or 4. So 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 4. You know how the time signature goes. Mm-hmm. And I have some. If you know the answer to this, raise your hand. And the kids all raised their hands that knew. And I would call on them, and they would say this. They would say 3 4. Oh, 4 4. Oh, 2 4. And one kid repeated it right before the other one, and I was like, "That's what she said." And everyone started losing their shit. But I didn't say it as a joke. I was being genuine about, like, it was a girl, and he said
that is what she said.
That is literally what she said. And all of the kids started laughing.
How old are they?
They're probably 7 and 8.
So they've heard it enough times from other people saying it. They know they're supposed. They know they're supposed to laugh. They don't know why.
They just were laughing, and I didn't go too deep into, like, I was like, oh no, I'm staying away from that. Resist, Johnny. Get into that. Resist. Come on, bring me the power. I need some power. So that was That was amazing. I mean, I should write down all the shit the kids say because it's really fun. Oh my goodness! It's.
You should give them a dad joke every day.
I do give them some dad jokes. Some of them. I do the whole, what do you call a magic dog? A labracadabrador. They love that one. Just certain ones, because the ones that stay with me are the dirty ones I can't say.
Don't say those.
The pirate jokes too. I remember those.
What do you call a fly without wings?
Huh.
A walk. Thanks for following our socials, Johnny. I just did that one yesterday.
I'm not with the in crowd.
Well, Jonny Spazz, your job is to make kids fall in love with music. I can't imagine a better job for you. So I'm just excited for you.
It's a dream. It is. I didn't know it was my dream until I experienced it. And thank you. I appreciate that. It was a crazy year, and I feel like I didn't look down. So I wanted to.
Don't look down. When you're on that tightrope, and we've been on that tightrope over this past couple years, that is for sure. The pandemic came on right when you were graduating grad school.
Yep.
And you went from financially comfortable with your music gigs to out of work and really not knowing where your next paycheck was coming from. We were like looking up everything we could find, like teaching Chinese kids how to speak English.
And I went
over
through
the internet,
the whole process. Like I had several interviews, and I went to go do it, and then something else came up, so I didn't do it because it was immediate money, and I needed it then. So,
you went and worked for a bee farmer.
I was
honey farmer.
I worked at the apiary. I had to get stung by a bee on purpose to get that job. I watched it happen. I hold my hand out. I was like, oh God, this is going to suck. I just know it. And he's like, we have to test if you are allergic, because he was from Israel. And I'm not doing the accent justice, but it was just the way he said it. Like, it was so matter of fact. He's like, come here, hold hand. Boom. Ow!
Holy crap.
And then because of one of my pre-existing conditions, the physical limitations I have these days is I was like, at the end of the second day, I was like shaking. He's like, you do a great job, but I don't think this is right for you. And he was right. So, and then I worked for DHL, my arch nemesis. I don't hate them as much as I hate FedEx. I fucking hate FedEx. Sorry, we can edit all this out.
I like how
but
I just imagine you jousting with FedEx in like a Top Foods parking lot or something. You drive your trucks at each other as fast as you can and hold out one of those tubes that has a map in it and see whose windshield shatters.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Like, that's why you hate FedEx.
Accurate. Let's go with that.
Think like the scene from Anchorman where the various rival news groups are there, but it's rival postal services. You got FedEx and DHL, UPS, and all the while Amazon is sitting on a ledge going, good fight.
And I'm Ben Stiller from the Spanish channel sitting there. That's great.
But here you are now, Jonny Spazz. I'm just so proud of you. It's incredible.
And look, I got a new phone.
Ooh.
The last upgrade I had was in 2015.
Dang.
It just goes to show you got to keep at it. Things might suck in the moment, but you keep working and keep being optimistic, and you'll end up where you're supposed to be.
Don't look down.
When you're on that tight rope, just trying to survive, just trying to get across, when you look down, you get paralyzed. You let fear rule you, and you've been on that tightrope. I have seen you up there. And it's not easy, and it wasn't always perfect, but you got through it, and you're stronger and better for it. And you didn't let yourself. It's only natural to want to take a glance and look down just a little bit. Just get that little look, see what's going on down there. But you can't live there.
How do you pick yourself up by the bootstraps if you don't look down? You got to find them.
That's what sense of touch is for. Gotta feel it.
the sense of touch.
Also, you literally can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
I know, it's like two forklifts lifting each other up.
Right.
That doesn't work.
I've tried that. It doesn't.
I've tried it. I've tried it with forklifts. It doesn't work.
Not the way you would think it would or hope it would.
No, just one of them loses and flips over. And then you have to explain it to your boss the next day. Like, how'd that happen? Were you driving fast around the warehouse again? No. I tried to make them levitate by lifting both of them up at the same time.
Merz.
You're laughing like it's a joke. It's real.
Merz, how you been doing? You've been on the social medias out there telling those jokes.
Yeah, I just got back from Yellowstone. That was awesome. Wore the Sexy Dad Jokes brand ambassador. Repping the SDJ.
Proudly wearing that SDJ merch at Yellowstone.
Yep. Shot a couple. So there is no, in Yellowstone, there really aren't cell phones. At a couple of the lodges, there's cell phones. So you can, within about a mile of the lodge, and they don't let the towers go up high because they don't want to obstruct anything. So the towers are really low to the ground, as short as the lodges are, the roof of the lodge, right? And you get a little bit of limited cell phone service. So when we were driving through Mammoth, that was the place where I did it. And there were literally elk like 10 or 15 feet behind me and surrounding me, essentially. And I was like, well, I'm just going to record this real quick and then I'm going to go use the restroom. And so I did it. And there were elk everywhere and it was kind of scary, but they didn't attack me. So it was good.
You recorded one of your daily dad jokes.
Yeah, I did 2 of them when we were in Mammoth. One on, I can't remember what day it was, Saturday or Sunday, and then one on Tuesday or Monday or something. So it was pretty neat. One was on our way out by Lake Yellowstone, which is the largest alpine lake in North America.
Wow.
And Alpine Lake is above 7,000 feet. So it's and it's like 275 miles.
Whoa.
It looks like a little ocean, like a sea. Like you can barely see the other mountains on the other side.
And of course you can see the mountains because the earth is flat, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I've been in several areas.
The curvature of the earth.
All right, Josh,
if
you go
that's why
outside,
you
hold
can
up a
see-
yardstick on top of the roof, and I'll see if I can see you with my binoculars.
Yeah. You see if you can see him. Yeah, please. I did if you ever watch that documentary on Netflix, it's pretty good.
It is good.
It's the end of it is amazing. The last 5 minutes is just awesome. You can see somebody's dreams get crushed, like Johnny getting fired from being a teacher. Just
Oh boy.
Don't put that into the ether.
gone. Oh,
I just got here, man. I barely got.
I just got here.
I don't even have ass grooves yet.
I'm new.
Don't you
Oh.
put that on me.
what? It's not on anything. It's not even real. I cannot support that stance.
Yeah, but it's on the air, Merz.
Sorry, I got Twitter pated.
If everything that I said came to fruition, we'd be in real trouble.
That's true. Well, catch Merz and his daily dad jokes over at the Sexy Dad Jokes Instagram and TikTok accounts, and just search for Sexy Dad Jokes.
And on our Facebook page, too.
And you'll see Merz's
We have a Facebook
creative
page?
attempts at telling dad jokes.
And I did give out some stickers. I met somebody from Bulgaria, somebody from Israel, somebody from Kentucky, and somebody from Montana. And they asked about my shirt because they thought it was hilarious.
It is hilarious.
That old Square 50s guy is always an attention getter.
I even showed my Richard, if you will, at the Craters of the Moon in Idaho.
Oh my.
And when I say showed my Richard, I mean, we have Square 50s guy, Richards the third, Jr., several times over, the second, on a pair of trunks that you can get. They're pink and they're amazing.
They sure are, Merz.
Good for all your covering needs.
So, Josh, you just went through a big move.
Yeah, I had a lot happen. The month of July was a pretty big month for my girlfriend, Rachel, and I. We first had our 1-year anniversary together, which was nice. And we had a nice little week-long vacation, but the sort of not sour note, but the caveat was that we realized that our week-long vacation was gonna end, and the week afterwards we would be moving into our first ever apartment together. Because prior to that, I was living with my folks, and Rachel had her own apartment with a roommate, and we moved in to this very wonderful. It's classified as an apartment, but it's basically a 2-story townhouse. In late July, It took us a few days to actually move in, and it took us about almost 2 months to unpack. Yeah.
Wow.
Numerous storage trips, numerous inventory checks, but we now have this wonderful townhouse, essentially. It's a nice, quiet location. I have an office studio area, and it's gotten along very well. It's been quite the hectic journey to getting to where we are now, and we're now fully settled down and ready to move on to a brand new chapter of our lives. And we could not be more blessed with this location and with the price that we got for it. It's been very, very wonderful for both of us, to be certain.
Well, that's great. Always makes life easier when you have something your own that you can work for to keep.
Absolutely.
Makes it easier to go into jobs that you don't want to do, or go out and make things and get it done so you can get it done for yourself. It's always, I need that. If I don't have that, I get very demoralized.
Congratulations, Josh.
Yeah, congrats.
Is this the first time you've had your own place?
Yeah, this is literally the first time. I mean, I've been with my family up until this point. My entire life, we stayed in one house. We've never moved. And this is the first time I've ever moved out and now have a place to call my own.
Oh, that's exciting.
And it is exciting. It was a bit, there wasn't intimidation. There was more melancholy than anything else. Moving out from the childhood home, getting stuff out of your room. But the good news is that the place itself is about probably at max a 5-minute walk from my old house.
Oh, well, there you go.
And so I'm in the same city, same town, and my family is just a quick 3-minute drive away. And so it wasn't like I was moving far away. I mean, if they needed a cup of sugar from us, we could just walk it over should the state's weather permit it on those rare few times out of the year. But yeah, I mean, so there was a bit of sadness in having that happen, but I get to see my family all the time, and I'm not that far away. We're basically neighbors at this point, which, what more could you ask for?
It's cool. It's awesome, man. Congrats, dude.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great. So, and see, we've all been super busy this summer, and I'm definitely included in that. For me, for our listeners out there who've been paying attention, we've talked about some of my struggles. I was doing consulting work to make a living, and then I had some contracts that were sunsetting, and that was out of income, and kind of the pressures that puts a person under, and trying to figure out what's next for me. And so I really committed myself hardcore into a job search. And it took me 2 or 3 months of hardcore just interviewing or applying, interviewing, cover letters. I took part in 20 or 30 interviews. It was intense. It's a full-time job to look for a full-time job. But I'm excited to report I landed a really awesome job. I've been at it for over a month now, and it's a delight. I look forward to going to work. How lucky am I for that? And my job is basically telling the story of philanthropy and how philanthropy needs to evolve and change so that we're actually centering communities and centering the people we're trying to help, rather than centering donors and, giving them crab leg dinners and open bars to woo them. It's more about, hey, donors, we need you to step up and show up in this really urgent moment in our world right now. Earth is on fire. We've got a pandemic. We've got climate change. We've got hurricanes. We've got equity issues and racism and sexism. And there's just so much going on that we need people to step up for. And that's what we need to center, and not trying to woo someone with all these fancy things. So that's basically my job, telling the story of how we evolve as a philanthropic industry. So it's exciting work. I actually do have a few reflections during my job search. This idea that men were judged by our strength and our ability to provide and protect. And as a guardian versus being a warrior, as a true guardian, that's something we want to strive for. But when a man is out of work, he doesn't feel in his full power. And yet that's when he needs to be his most confident, right? To be able to get that job. So it's this sort of juxtaposition of feeling vulnerable, but needing to project this confidence, but also being authentic. And really, I think for me, that was the key, was my authenticity as I did all those interviews and whatnot.
It's a lot to balance.
It is. And a man's value is oftentimes tied up in his career and his job title. And this notion that a man only has value if he is employed. And I think that needs to be challenged and called out, that you're not worthless as a man if you don't have a job at the moment. So that, it's complicated. The other thing I want to mention, and this gets back to our episode about how to lose like a man. When you're job searching, you can't let rejections stop you from going out and making history. I can think of countless quarterbacks who in football who were like Tom Brady was drafted in the later rounds. How many quarterbacks were selected ahead of Tom Brady and Russell Wilson? How many times were they rejected? But they went on to become some of the best QBs ever. And so even the best of the best have been passed over. And when you're job searching, it's a numbers game. There's so many people out there and there's so many things that are beyond your control that you have to not be deterred by rejection. Rejection is, you need to be comfortable with it and learn from it. And that was our message from that episode, is a failure is wasted if we don't learn the lesson that comes with it. So every time I didn't get that interview, I didn't get the call back, I tried to figure out, okay, what can I do better? What feedback am I getting from people I am talking to? You need to be just constantly trying to sharpen what you're doing. So anyways, those are some reflections from the job search. And I just feel really lucky and excited to be working at the org I'm at now.
It's a good feeling, man.
Yeah. So that's kind of the latest with me. Oh, and beyond that, I got to coach Jack's flag football team this summer, which is pretty cool. Just like drawing up plays and trying to work with the boys, improve their skill set. And we also learned like how to lean on your teammates, how to deal with adversity. Cause we started the season 0-2, but we kept working at it. And we ended up finishing the season, I think 3-1. And so that was really exciting. That I was really proud of the boys because we didn't let adversity stop us and demoralize us. We kept fighting and trying to get better, and we did.
Nice.
Yeah. And then Glow, my 2-year-old daughter, she's been doing great. She just started daycare. And of course, she immediately caught a nasty 2-week bug that she's only just now starting to recover from.
Oh, that's the worst.
And yeah, it was stressful. We had to get her tested, and luckily she's COVID negative. But for me, it like really drives home the importance that we all get vaccines. Yeah. Because Glow can't get a vaccine. There isn't one ready for her yet.
Dude, my school, I've been in the classroom every week that we've been back to school for 2 weeks, and every day that I've been back, I've been in a room with COVID.
What?
It turns out. Oh yeah. We have about 1,000 students, and about 10 to 15% of our students are out. Second week of school. And a handful of teachers. Now, I don't know what they're, between HIPAA, you don't really know, but with the kids, because there's a designation when they get called out of school for that. I had my class interrupted, and they brought out half the class. I had to create seating charts so their number and the way the seating charts go is they have to pull everybody around that student based on seating arrangement. And since they come in and out of class, it's insane.
Oh,
yeah.
Florida,
here, let me single you out.
They said Florida, if it was its own country, that it would be like walled off, not letting anybody in or out of here because of how bad COVID is here. And Ron Death Santis is what they're calling him. It's pretty bad.
Yikes. Well, and that's why for those who can get the vaccine, it is imperative because it will help make things just a little bit safer for those who can't get the vaccine.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a lot of Florida things happening right now for anybody not paying attention. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, I hope you're staying safe, Johnny.
School boards are pretty crazy.
Yeah, it is. Like
there's some good YouTubes to watch.
Yeah, like the governor threatened to withhold funding from schools that implement mask mandates,
which is utterly ridiculous. If you're all about like
the children
freedom, just go with what he kind of says, freedom and liberty, right? And so now he's going to take away from the local community to be able to police how they want their school to be run. Mm-hmm. And he's going to that's just totally against what he's saying. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, the president came through and said he's going to fund federally the schools that disobey his order. Good. And they are. So
good. Sounds like a way for him to get some money in his coffers. Oh, we'll just let the rest of the states take care of it, and we'll just take some extra money. Thanks,
they're
Florida.
doing it to the schools directly, not to the townships. So
yeah, but if the state doesn't have to spend that money, then they have extra money that they budgeted for, right?
Oh yeah,
so now
I get what you're saying.
And I'm saying that's a jerk move by the governor, right? Yeah. Like you're making me pay for it because you won't get your act together. That's cute.
Right.
And totally goes against freedom and liberty for the local school board to decide how they want to run their school. If they want to require masks, they can do that. That's how school boards work. It's not up to the governor to come in and
they did. Our district implemented a mask mandate where all students and teachers are mandated to wear them, and it ends. It's going to last a month, and then they're going to revisit it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, Johnny, I hope you're keeping safe in those classrooms. I've been worried about you. It's pretty grim out there in Florida.
Yeah. I'm vaxxed. I'm masked. I'm washing hands and using sanitizer. I'm keeping the kids staggered out and separated as best as we can to help them while they're in my room. So,
yeah, my partner, Colleen, she's a teacher as well. She just went back to school this past week, and we're all worried, like when COVID starts cropping up with all these kids getting together. Like, what do we do? Like, at what point does she isolate in the house? Yeah. It's like, gosh. But it's hard times, which is kind of the message of this episode is about, there's a lot out of our control. And if for the things that are in our control, like getting vaxxed, it's like we got to step up as much as we can. But anyways, we'll get into all of that. It's good to know that for the most part, we're all doing well individually. And now we can get going on our topic today, vaccines.
But before we get into that, Ben, I actually have a Square 50s guy story that I think would be rather fitting for today's episode.
Oh, goodness, Jonny Spazz. What did old Richard do this time?
This all happened just a few days ago when I was at the pharmacy taking my niece to get her vaccine. Okay, Lily. This very nice lady will see you and give you your shot. I'm going to go shop real quick, and I'll pick you up, and we can get ice cream later today, okay? Have fun! I'm so proud of her, growing up so fast. Who knew a kid would be so excited to get a shot?
Ah, yes. I remember when I got my first shot. I was so tough, I made the needle cry.
Richard Ricks! How the heck are you?
For the love of all that is holy, how How many times do I need to correct you, Spazz? It's Richard Richards the Third Jr.
Right, my bad. What are you doing here in the pharmacy, Dick Dickles?
Well, Spazz, I think it may be fate that we met here, or it could be me getting wrong directions.
How do you mean?
Well, you see, I asked a fella where I could find some good alcohol. He gave me directions that led me right here. Now that I am here, I can't seem to find any scotch or whiskey anywhere.
Well, Richard, this is a pharmacy after all. The only alcohol you'll find here is in the rubbing alcohol section.
Oh, well, anyways, what might you be doing here, Spazz?
Well, Richard, I was actually here to help my niece get her first COVID vaccine shot. She says she wants to help others by doing her part in fighting the virus. Have you gotten vaccinated, Richard?
Never.
Richard, are you saying you don't like needles?
It's not so much the needles, but rather the cowardly idea of having to rely on potentially a fake medicine in order to help you feel good.
Oh,
Are you seriously suggesting that you're against getting vaccinated?
Back in my day, when people got sick, they just rubbed some tobacco on it and you'd be as fit as a fiddle.
Jeez, you go.
My treatment plan? Smoking those smooth, mild Chesterfield cigarettes. The only shot you'll see me getting is from my afternoon highballs, Spazz.
Okay, Richard. Oh boy. A lot to unpack there. Where do I even start? First off, we've talked about this. Using tobacco is not how you get healthy. It will literally give you, like, cancer and a bunch of other things that are bad for your health. Cigarettes and liquor are not a prevention plan for a deadly disease that has infected at least 219 million and killed like 4.5 million people worldwide. Come on, Richard.
Golly, that is a lot of people, Spazz. But have you heard that the vaccine has microscopic robots in it?
Oh,
The Red Menace is a treachery looking to control us all. Don't trust anyone, Spazz. Anyone. Those little robots will turn you into a commie puppet, comrade.
Richard, if Bill Gates, the government, or the Red Menace wanted to collect data on us, we're already doing it for them. We carry around these little data collecting machines called phones. They don't need to put robots in us to track us. Besides, the lipid nanoparticles in the Pfizer vaccine protect and transport the vaccine component. They do not contain little computers or robots. Richard, I'd hate to burst your red bubble, buddy, but there is no Red Menace. None. Nada. Zilch. The Cold War ended like ages ago. And more importantly, these vaccines are the way to a healthier world, and a happier one too. There is no little dirty secret to them. They are plain, simple, scientifically backed vaccines that will not only keep you and your loved ones safe, but bring our country back to its normal red, white, and blue glory, baby. I mean, we all need to do our part and get vaccinated. Doing so as a people would truly put the United back in the United States.
yes.
Don't be giving me the royal shaft here, Spazz. I've got enough beatniks harping at me to get the shot. If you want to tell me what to put into my body, I'll tell you to get off my lawn. But first, let me give you some lunch. On the menu today is a knuckle sandwich with a touch of mustard.
You know, you're right, Richard. I never really thought about that. I'm so high and mighty about you getting a vaccine, but what you put in your body is a personal choice.
Oh, gee willikers. You mean for once in our conversation it's you who sees the light? Now we're cooking with gas, Daddy-O.
Look, all I can do is encourage you to re-up on this and hope you'll eventually get the jab because it's for the good of all of us if you do. Not to mention, for the good of yourself. Remember the polio vaccine back in your day?
Oh, gee willikers, that nifty vaccine did work like the gangbusters.
But I want you to know that even if you don't, I still want to be your friend. I still listen to your long-winded stories, and I'll still help you get those ankle biters off.
Ah, shucks, Spazz. Aren't you just the bee's knees? I like the cut of your jib, Spazz. Spoken like a true diplomat. Tell you what, let me look through this propaganda, I mean literature here, so I can learn more about how this works.
I'll take it, Richard. One step at a time, buddy. Stay healthy.
Yeah. Oh, that Square 50s guy, always quite the character. It's good to see, though, that he's at least thinking about doing his part and helping things get back to normal.
It'll probably be the first decent thing he's done in years.
Well, I guess you can say that him doing this is a real shot in the dark.
Oh, boy. So let's talk about this vaccine. For so long, it seems like there's always things out there trying to divide us, right? It's been, who did you vote for? Then it became, do you wear a mask? And now, do you vax? So what I want to talk about is really how do we talk to each other and with each other about this whole vaccine thing?
Yeah, it seems pretty incredible to me, and I've lived long enough to see the differences in togetherness in the nation. Like, for example, post 9/11, like that feeling is all but gone. You know, and I'd hate for there to be a tragedy just so we could come together. You know, it shouldn't have to be that way. But and it's gotten so bad that, you know, friends are separating and families are even dividing as well. It's just, it's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, the thing is, there is a tragedy going on. You know, we've got over 1 million people who have died from COVID. And yet, rather than uniting us as I'd hope it would, it seems to be dividing us. So, but before we get deeper into that, what I want to do is pose sort of a 2-part question to y'all right here. So, are you vaccinated, and why did you do it if you did it?
Anybody want to go first?
I think
You just volunteered, Johnny. That's what just happened.
Yeah. So for me, I'm more of like, I guess I kept the attitude from the military where, you know, nobody, when you're a kid, you don't like to get shots. I mean, what kid does? I mean, I guess some do, but you know, I was never excited about getting immunized about anything, the ones I remember anyway. But I guess I'm desensitized where I'm like, just give me the goddamn thing so I can get back to normal. I didn't think about it. I just did it. I was excited to get it. So I felt like that was a step that towards normalcy of whatever that was pre-pandemic. So I just, I mean, for me, it wasn't even a question of whether I was going to do it. It's like, when can I get the damn thing? Give me the goddamn soap. I'll eat it.
Makes sense. You kind of were conditioned to be sort of desensitized to the idea of getting vaxxes. So you're just like, go ahead and shoot me up.
Before you even start boot camp, you walk down a hallway with people on either side of you, and they each have one of those. They either have the air gun. You remember the shots they used to give you with the forced air injection or the needle, and you walk up, you get a shot in each arm, you take another step, and it's like 4 or 5 people deep. So it's like 8 or 10 shots that you get before you even start, like straight off the bus, like before you even issued your uniforms and gear. So
that's the Captain America origin story too, right?
Essentially.
Do you think you have any superpowers from your military shots?
Yeah, definitely some, but I don't know if other people would appreciate them the way I do.
More importantly, though, do you have America's ass?
Well, let's check.
No.
Oh, No, don't.
No, we don't need to check. You check it later.
Oh, I'm sitting on it. It's hard to see when I'm sitting on it. That is America's ass.
Okay, so you have been vaccinated. When did you get vaxxed? Which one did you get?
I got Johnson because the school district I worked for had several doses, enough for the entirety of all the staff. So, and when we had our special day where the National Guard and the Air Force, they sent them down with their medical technicians and they were doing it for everybody. And it was very efficient, very fluid. I was in and out in 45 minutes, and that's with the 30-minute wait time that they have to make sure that you're good. You don't have a reaction within the 30 minutes. They had emergency staff ready to go. So everything was one and done. And I haven't thought about it since. I had my 2 days of soreness, and then I was like, all right, can we get past this now? Because that would be great.
And for you, there's a lot at stake. Like, you are predisposed to potentially being not reacting well to COVID if you were to contract it. And you live in Florida, which is sort of like the Wild West out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a music teacher with 800 students?
725.
Whew.
And I see them in a 7-day period. I see 725 students. So it's about 100 a day.
Wow. And has COVID hit your school?
Oh yeah. Even from the beginning, we still have teachers out from the beginning weeks of school, and we've been open for 6 weeks.
Wow. So this isn't theoretical for you. This is your life.
They came to my classroom to pull kids that were surrounded, but now that the laws changed where parents can opt out if their kids are quarantined, if they're exposed, yeah, that's a great idea.
Oh boy. So you've had COVID in your room.
I've been face to face in the same room with adults that I know had it. So
wow.
At this point, I'm getting desensitized in the wrong direction where it's went from fear to frustration. Meaning I just want this to be done. Can I just go back to life? That'd be great.
Yeah.
I don't know if vaccines will put us there. That's just my feeling. I'm sure everybody has similar feelings like that. They're ready to just be done with all this. I'm just tired of it. But
yeah.
I've acclimated. So now I always have my boxes of masks in my car. I have vaxxers for other people that may be around me if they need them. I'm their go-to guy for that. It's become that way. So,
well, and just looking at the data and seeing how COVID affects the vaccinated, I'm really glad that you're vaccinated because I know you're face to face with it, and that's scary.
I probably shouldn't have gotten it when I did because they came out because I have a pre-existing condition where they're like, we're not sure if it's safe for this. I'm like, oh, give me the goddamn thing. We'll figure it out.
Oh boy.
I'm just that person. I'm like, just let's get it done. And I don't want to talk about it anymore. For me.
How about you, Josh? Where are you at on things?
Well, so to answer the first part of the question, am I vaccinated? Yes. We did touch on this briefly in an episode in the past where Johnny and we got our vaccines, and I got vaccinated. I had the Moderna. I got first shot in mid-March and then second shot in early April of this year. So I've been vaccinated for this whole time. And I wanted to get it because I've been working in a retail space for quite a while, even before the pandemic and now currently through the pandemic. And I wanted to ensure safety for myself and for my family and for my little sister who wasn't able to get the vaccine at the time because they didn't have anything for 12-year-old kids at that point. I want to just do my part to stay safe, especially working in an open retail environment where the mask to no mask ratio is about 50-50 at best. And you can't ever tell if someone actually is going to come in with the virus or not until it's far too late. And so I'd want to be better safe than sorry. So, I just want to do my part. Did I have some side effects? Yeah, as they predicted with, people who get the vaccine who are younger, the side effects tend to be more observable in younger people than in older people. And it happened to me. But when I got the shot, I'd had to go to work those same days. So I'm
Oh.
supposed to be recuperating and just relaxing, but I'm working on about 9 hours a day with a lot of active, nonstop
Yeah.
physical labor for about 8.5 hours. And so
That'll do it.
the side effects were a lot more noticeable, especially with the second shot, where I think like with the first shot, I had like a 4-hour rest period before going to work. Second shot, which is the more heavy duty one, I had about an hour and then I had to go to work. And so, yeah, then I booted out at like 9 p.m. that night. I was supposed to be like till like 10 or 11 o'clock, but I booted out at about 9 because I realized, yeah, this is something ain't right. And if I'm able to tell that something ain't right, I think it's best to just sit down. But after about a day of rest, everything was normal. And so, yeah, I got the vaccine because I just wanted to be better safe than sorry. That's really my reason.
And I remember you reporting just how harsh those side effects were at the time.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they weren't as bad as when I got mono about a month later, which was a whole hoot and a half of absolute nightmares. And like, I'll take the vaccine the day off of just having a sore shoulder and just being kind of tired compared to that week-long nightmare, to be sure. But not to anyone who's listening, do they think that, oh, did you get mono from the vaccine? No, it's because somebody didn't know how to clean the dishes at a restaurant. That's what happened. Okay. So let's just put that little conspiracy myth to bed. Yeah.
And both of you haven't had COVID.
No.
Well, for myself, I've gotten the vax. I got it in the spring, pretty much as soon as it was available to my category, because they phased it in. Like first the seniors were eligible. There's like age thresholds.
Seniors and medical staff, and then
right, frontline folks. And so as soon as I was eligible, I pretty much got it like that week. And at first, when they were talking about this whole vaccine thing, before they had fully developed it and put it out to market, I'm like, I'm good. Let's see how this plays out a little bit first. We'll let other people sort of be the guinea pigs and we'll see how it goes with them. And then we'll see. And by the time the vaccine was actually ready to come out to market, I was like, where do I sign up?
Yeah, I felt that pretty much the same. I was like ready to just get it done. And I'm not even one, like, I don't get the flu vaccine ever.
Well,
I never used to get it. I just thought it was unnecessary. So I can feel that for those that may be wary of it or unconvinced or just for whatever reasoning, I like, I don't know, just for me me specifically, it just made sense. I was like, I just want to be done so bad with all of I just want to go back to playing shows and not having to remember where I wear a mask. I feel like it's a post-apocalyptic type thing, but to a much lesser extent. But it's like,
well, what changed for you, Ben?
Yeah, good question, Merz. So for me, I really just looked at the data, right? People who received the vaccine were like really not getting COVID. And if they did get COVID, the symptoms were just so much milder than those without the vax. And so in my head, what I'm thinking is, okay, yeah, this is like this unfamiliar thing. I don't know how much I can trust it. I don't know how much it's really been. I looked at the data. I saw the sample size of the people they looked at. It wasn't like millions of people, but it was enough that you can get a sense of like what's happening here. And yeah, normally I would want more testing before I try something. But what was very clear was just how significantly it was working against COVID. And so the bottom line for me, the bottom line was that the risks of getting COVID, and spreading it to my family, not to mention my own risks as a cancer survivor, the risks of getting COVID outweigh any side effects that I might not be aware of or anything from the vaccine. So that was the bottom line. Like I was more worried about COVID than I was about the vaccine. And I saw that the vaccine was working.
Yeah.
But
good.
That's kind of my story. What about you, Merz?
Well, yeah, I haven't got the vaccine yet. And I say yet, like it's not off the table or anything. I did have COVID. I think we talked about it on at least one episode, if not two. December, January of.
Yeah, that was in
That's right.
episode 4.
Yep.
Talked about that. Yeah.
So
when you said iconically 2020 got you.
Yeah, that's right. 2020 got me, guys. That's right. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at is, well, okay, I haven't got the vaccine because I had COVID. And I've looked at a lot of numbers as well. So I'm just kind of skeptical about it. And I just kind of like that the goalposts seem to be moving. So that just bothers me. So then, I mean, I looked at the CDC and tried to see what, like read up on it. And there just seems to be some contradictions about a lot of different things, which I understand will happen with a novel virus. But then I also say, okay, so we're treating something new. Just a little bit skeptical about how that's going, I guess.
That makes sense.
And it doesn't matter if it's the blue ties or the red ties in office. That's not like how I'm basing my decision, right? So,
yeah, sure.
It's not a
You're basing
divisive
more on the
thing
actual
in that regard.
Yeah, you're basing more on the actual evidence and the statistics that have been changing and showing throughout time, as far as from the scientific perspective, right?
Yeah. And at first it was okay. Well, I'm going to wait for the other shoe to drop, a lot like Ben was saying. And then we all had COVID. So when it first came out, we were only 6 months away from having COVID at that point. Or when, it was about the time May, June, we had it back in January. So just kind of waiting to see. That's what I wanted to do. I had a date and I was like, well, we'll see if they require, like, do you have to go get another shot or anything like that? And then of course that's what's happening now. So I'm just kind of like, well, how many shots, how many boosters am I going to have to get? But that's just me. That's why I haven't got it yet. So
the moving goalposts, some contradictions, which again, I understand it's a novel virus. So you're going to think one thing works and then it doesn't. And that's why you have to test it. So yeah.
For me, I think if I was in a position where I had already had COVID, I think most of my fears from COVID come from the long-term unknown effects of COVID. But I'm to the point now where I'm like, it's so pervasive in society and it's so splitting between everything. I'm just over all of it. And I want to stop caring about it. That's kind of where
that's a real thing that's talked about in articles too, is COVID fatigue, right? We're all very tired of this.
Yeah.
And we want solutions and answers, right? That's where the whole population is at.
I forgot to mention, so I got the Pfizer. So it's interesting. The three of us who've been vaccinated each got a different type of vaccines.
Do you think the government made it that way so we could be test subject for each one?
Specifically for our podcast that has.
Yeah. Trust in government is a big thing. And we'll get into that. But okay, so y'all at least know where we each stand on this. And so what we want to do is kind of get to the bottom of this whole debate. So it's a couple prompting questions here. Why are people hesitating about getting the vaccine? And why are vaxxers so intent and sometimes maybe a bit judgmental about everyone getting the vax? What are your thoughts?
I think there's a lot to unpack there. I think people's perception of it comes from largely the internet, social media being the biggest purveyor of disinformation. I mean, you saw Rudy Giuliani under oath saying, "Oh, I got my fraud information from Facebook." You're like, really? Essentially, what you're telling me is I have to deal with all this stupid bullshit because you saw something on Facebook and you have old man syndrome. And it's like Grandpa Simpson. It makes me think of the Simpsons.
Too much power.
It's like where your voice, where you get your information from matters, and I'm not telling you where to get your information, but if somebody on the street corner is holding up a sign says the end is nigh, I mean, I have questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that going to the first question, why are people hesitant about getting the vaccine? There could be a few different reasons. There's no doubt one is that there is some sort of cognitive cultural bias that they may have in some form and fashion that keeps them from going through with it, either by full on refusal or just by a lot of hesitation based on those biases. And at the same time as well, much like with Merz, that there are people who they just, and quite respectfully so, are raising good questions about the fact that the statistics keep changing. A lot of them are still experimental, and a lot of results will change because we, in some cases, rushed to get a vaccine out to get the virus dealt with. So I'm sure that there are people who they are seeing the goalposts change. They are seeing the facts that now, when before there wasn't even conversation, now there are true signs that we, for some of the vaccines, need to get boosters. So now there's a lot of questions raised where, wait a minute, you said this and now it's different. And so there's definitely a good justification for questioning and trying to understand why the sudden change. And that gives the hesitation. Why are vaxxers so intent and a bit judgmental on those who don't get the vaccine and vice versa? I mean, again, there's biases that could be presented in various formats. And we, unfortunately, a lot of times are in a society where we are quick to judge first and emotionally react without actually taking the necessary steps to truly think about whether or not what we are about to say or think is really of sound mind, right? So if someone's come up if an anti-vaxxer saw someone who is a vaxxer, they would most likely be quick to judge and say, well, you're a vaxxer because you're now this, blah, 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 blah. Instead of actually thinking about whether or not that's the right thing to say and have inquiries and questions and have a general conversation about it. Instead, a lot of times people will go online and just blast out their emotions onto social media without thinking about whether or not it was really the right thing to do, is what I personally think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one important distinction I want to point out here, which it's not because of anything we said or didn't say, it's just seems like a prudent thing to do, which is, people that are deciding not to get vaccinated are not the same as anti-vaxxers. So I think for me, it's like there's people who are perpetuating something that they don't know anything about. Like we're saying here, look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not, a virologist. I don't really know. I'm trusting the systems and government in place because that's why they're there. And if we start to lose belief in these systems, then that's part of the problem. I have to believe that those people there, on the ground, the boots on the ground, people are doing their due diligence and they're giving us this information to help us because it really benefits everybody else. It doesn't really make sense, a lot of the conspiracy theories. Anyway, big difference between people choosing not to get vaccinated for their own personal reasons and the anti-vax movement. I think that could, in a sense, dangerously be conflated. Yeah, there's conflation there that can be dangerous in the sense of I don't want to put people into categories
right
on their having a vaccine or not. So
right. And to go off of that as well, there's not just the people who don't want to get the vaccine and are the anti-vaxxers. When just going to the conversation of people who don't have the vaccine right now and may not get the vaccine later, there are two groups that we can look at where there are the people who don't want to get the vaccine, but then there's also the people who can't get the vaccine because of health issues. And I think that's a very important thing to understand when you say are someone who is vaccinated and you meet someone either online or in person and you ask them if they are vaccinated and they say no, that you ask the question, why do you not have the vaccine? And if they say that they can't get the vaccine, then I don't want to say they have a get out of jail free card, but there's a lot more feasible understanding as to, well, okay, so you can't get the vaccine because you've been dealt a heavy hand in health problems. I know at least 3 people who can't get the vaccine in my own life, and I'm sure we all do to some extent. And then the people who don't, a word I'm going to be saying a lot in this conversation is bias, to which there could be a political, a religious, an uncertainty bias, to which then a conversation can continue to not necessarily influence, but more or less just understand on both sides why someone has the vaccine and why someone doesn't have the vaccine. So then potentially that person who doesn't want to get the vaccine right now might change their minds, or if not. But I think the biggest thing is that regardless of whatever quote unquote category, be it anti-vaxxer, someone who doesn't want to get the vaccine, someone who can't get the vaccine, and those who have the vaccine, one of the biggest things, and probably the most important thing, is that we still respect each other's points of view and don't immediately start demonizing people just because of a point of view. Maybe we've seen that already with as we talked about in episode 2, I think, the political thing, where just because someone supports one political figure over another, and that's the only difference between friends or family, that doesn't necessarily mean that now the friendship is dead. The family relations are dead. There can be conversations and there can still be connections. It's just a matter of conversation and a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
It's such a complicated issue. And what I really want to put out there is this idea, like, I think no matter what side you're on in this debate, we need to engage with each other in a way where we're actually listening to each other, because I fervently believe in the vaccine. Like, yeah, I understand the reasons for hesitation, but my take is like, this is the only path out of this freaking pandemic that we're so sick of. And the idea is, from a public health perspective, the more people who get vaccinated, the more people can contract it, because there is an immunity to it, a degree of immunity you get from getting the vaccine. And if you actually look at the numbers of people with the vax who are getting COVID, who are dying from COVID, and you look at people without the vax who are getting COVID, dying from COVID, it's exponential. More people without the vaccine getting COVID, dying from COVID. And we're almost at 5 million deaths worldwide from COVID. Documented. There are many more undocumented. So my take is like, this is our way out. There's this parable for religious folks out there. There's this dude who believes in God, believes God will always help him. And there's this great flood, and he's stuck on the top of his house, on his rooftop from the flood waters. And he keeps saying to himself, God will save me. God will help me. And a boat comes along with some people in it and say, hey, you're stuck on the roof. Well, come in the boat. We'll get you out of this. And he said, no, I'm going to stay here. God is going to help me through this, and he's going to save me. So the boat says, all right, suit yourself. They go on their way. Then a helicopter comes by and says, hey, we're going to airlift you out of here. Grab onto the thing. And it's like, nope, God is going to help me. He's going to save me from this. Floodwaters eventually overtake the house. The dude dies, goes up to heaven, and he says, God, how come you didn't help me? And God is like, well, I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. So that's the mentality here. Like, this is the helicopter. This is our lifeline. This is the way out of the pandemic. And it's up to us to accept that help.
Yeah. What's the saying? God helps those who help themselves. To which I would say, well, then why do we need God?
Well, that's another debate.
Another story. Just saying. But, but I get the point. The point is if you're going to, what do they call it? Jump a gift shark in the mouth or something like that. Something about if you don't take the things that we have available to you, then like, what are you standing against or for? You know?
Right.
I don't, I understand people's hesitancy. Again, I'll speak for myself. I probably should have waited because of my over pre-existing condition, but it's like, yeah, I tend to jump off the cliff before looking off the side.
Yeah. Well, and I get it. This is an intensely personal decision, what we put into our bodies.
Yeah.
It's a very personal decision. I totally hear that. And I'm very sensitive to that. And so that's why I really want to just promote conversation. I'm not even like trying to convert anyone. I just want us to be able to talk to each other about this without insulting each other.
Yeah.
Because there's always risk in anything you do. And our jobs as responsible humans, as men, as good men, and finding true strength within ourselves, our job is to assess risk and make smart decisions. And I think in this case, as I mentioned earlier, the risk of getting and spreading COVID for me far outweighs the risk of getting a vaccine. And really, the vaccine is just this absolute gift. This never happens that we have such an effective tool to combat this disease. But I just really want to emphasize we have to approach the conversation with compassion and not be judgmental about each other, both sides of the coin. In advance of this episode, I posted on my Facebook just to get a pulse of people. And I was basically, do you know anyone who hasn't gotten vaccinated? What are their reasons and concerns? And I'm asking for understanding and without judgment. And the first comment I got on that thread from a guy I really respect, a good friend of mine, someone who's intelligent, who's a loving person. He said the reasons are ignorance and being uneducated about what the vaccine is. And I'm like, oh gosh, that's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know anyone who will ever change their mind about something because they were called ignorant and uneducated. Like if our goal here is to get vaccines out there, like it doesn't help. It doesn't help to be name calling.
No, for sure.
And I really want to understand it. And let's talk about it. There's legit reasons. There's reasons that people are just nervous. Let them be nervous, but then let's help get more information out there that can at least inform each person's personal decisions. So I'll pose that question to Merz. What are you thinking about everything we're saying right now?
Well,
again, without judgment and totally, I want to hear your honest thoughts.
Yeah, I think that a big thing is the conflicting data on the CDC, the moving goalposts. None of the three, was it J&J, Moderna, and Pfizer?
Mm-hmm.
None of them are like 100% effective or 99.9, like measles and mumps and polio. Some of them are down in the high 70s, low 80s at first when you first get it. I think that's the J&J. So that's just a few things. I'm not saying that there's microchips, and this isn't a huge conspiracy, and I'm not an anti-vax, as we were saying earlier, as Jonny was pointing out. Get your MMR, get your polio, right? Get your vaccines. You should be getting those things. But just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop again. Just kind of like the goalposts seem to be moving. Now there's boosters. The J&J is this effective. The Pfizer is this effective. This one needs a booster at 8 months. Initially, the boosters were fine, but now there's research coming out of, or we're hoping that the Israeli military, specifically they're looking at the young men in their military who are going to get the booster and see if they get the myocardial something. It's where your heart expands.
Inflammation in the heart.
Yeah, which is like, that's a real thing. The CDC just talked about it. Dr. Fauci just talked about it.
Yeah.
So
on there.
Should we be giving 18-year-old young men specifically this booster? We don't know yet. And maybe we're causing their hearts to expand. And is that 18 or is it 18, 19, 20 up to age 28? I don't know.
I think it could be anybody. It's just it's such a low amount of people in comparison to how many have had it. It's not even, it's a percentage with a decimal with like 4 or 5 zeros in front of a 1, and that's, if we look at anything else, comparatively, those odds are great. Like, But when it comes to something you put in your body, it tends to change people's perspective.
Well, and I wonder what the odds are for polio or mumps, measles, rubella, right?
I don't know. It's got to be
probably lower than 0.0000 whatever.
I don't know. It depends. When you look at it from a statistical standpoint, you have to have the total population number versus the outcomes of those
that's
outliers.
That's why they're looking at Israel, because Israel is getting the vast amount of their population vaccinated, and they should have been around herd immunity, if not had herd immunity. And then the Delta and the MU came along, which is kind of another thing that is very bothersome about this strategy or tactic to defeat this is borders only stop one thing, and that's policy or law. They don't stop wildlife, or wildfire, actually, right? They don't stop wildlife or wildfire or weather or water or disease, pollution, people. So if we're going to get everybody vaccinated in, let's say, Washington State or the United States or Israel, the people that are coming in and out and the goods that are coming in and out and the weather and the wildlife that are coming across those borders could be what is reinfecting Israel and why they're having to do so many boosters, even though. So if Delta came from outside of Israel and now Delta is in Israel, then you have to get everybody in the world vaccinated across all the borders is my kind of point on that. Or we'll continue to see this mutation.
I have a question that's kind of off topic, but not really. Why do people buy massive amounts of toilet paper for vaccine or a quarantine for something that has nothing to do with bowel movements and shit?
Because somebody kind of started a rumor that we were in low supply. And when you get a low supply rumor, the demand skyrockets. And then you can resell it if you're smart and savvy, right? People were trying to do that. So,
I mean, if you bought 144 rolls of toilet paper in preparation for a 14-day quarantine, you probably should have been seeing a doctor long before the coronavirus.
That's true.
Poop.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Seriously, don't touch my door and step back 6 feet.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, pandemic.
He's got them coming now.
You know, quarantine has really put a damper on comedy. For months, nobody has walked into a bar.
It's true.
That's meta.
Meta. We're talking about a lot of how to discuss with other people. And one of the big things is when you preach tolerance, how long do you tolerate the intolerant?
Right.
And so
not very long.
Well, then you can't really preach tolerance is kind of the.
Oh, Ben's preaching tolerance, not me.
Oh, good. Oh, excellent. Get away from my door and step back 6 feet.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's a big piece of the story, I think, here. Okay, I mean, from what you've heard me talk about, you clearly know where I stand on this. But I mean, I think that's one of the big things about the progressive movement in general, because we got this, and I identify as a progressive person, and we have this rap as being elitist, as being better than you, holier than thou. And I'm kind of seeing that play out with this vaccine debate. And so this idea of hey, can we on the left who are so sure that we're right, and in my opinion, we are right on this vaccine debate, but we need to challenge ourselves to engage in this conversation with humility and in a listening mode, because one person's experience, we can't account for that. We can't tell someone what their experience is. We can't decide this for them. Each individual person has to decide this for themselves. And if we're just so not willing to open our own minds when we're asking others to open their minds and listen to these reasons and truly process it for ourselves. And we're doing a disservice to our very cause when we're unwilling to listen to others.
So I'm not saying you're a hypocrite or contradicting there, Ben. I just wanted to point out, since we're discussing it, and I obviously know where you stand, and you know a big part of where I stand on it, your expectation is that I will listen to what you have to say and think about it, correct?
Yes.
Is it a reasonable expectation that I would have the same for you?
Absolutely.
That, I think, is what gets missed a lot in these kinds of conversations. Not between you and I. Obviously, we've had lots of these kinds of conversations. But I think out there in the audience is, look, if you want somebody to listen to what you have to say, it's a two-way street. You have to be willing to listen to what they have to say as well. And again,
so I think,
go ahead, Jonny.
I think this is a good point to have. Let's have a role-playing exercise where
no, Jonny, I am keeping my pants on. We're not going over this.
Whoa,
I don't support that stance.
You guys told me I had to wear pants. Boy. I'm wearing pants.
Who said
I'm wearing
I thought it was.
How did you get to that to pants?
Because he said role play again, and I was like, role play again. I don't know about that.
Well, here's how it goes. So, are you going to get the vaccine? No, I'm not getting a vaccine. Didn't you know Bill Gates wants mind control? And the Venezuelan government rigged our elections somehow, and that affects the vaccine for some reason. So where do you go with that? And I'm being serious.
You continue to listen.
These are some of the arguments, but my brain just shuts off. It's like when something goes in your eye, it automatically closes. It's like the reaction is you have to shut it down. Like,
well, can you empathize?
And I'm not saying it. I'm not saying from the counter argument point of view, or for that reason, not saying to launch a counter argument, but it's like when somebody says something like that to me, like, okay, let's take it out of a different context, but the same principle. The earth is flat.
Okay, fine. The earth is flat. It doesn't really matter what you throw in there. Is what is it that you want from that person? You want them to listen to the evidence you're presenting.
I want them to stop being silly.
Okay.
What were you going to say there?
Silly.
You were going to say a different word.
I corrected myself before the first syllable.
Stubborn? Were you going to say stubborn?
It was definitely an ST, but it didn't end with a B. It ended with a D.
What I'm saying, Jonny, is it's not that I'm saying we need to agree with people who we don't agree with. Absolutely not. What I'm saying, it's not about the content of the conversation. It's about the tone and the vibe. In your role-playing example, to me, compassion isn't compliance or isn't just agreeing with someone to keep the peace. But I think it's possible to have an open conversation to be able to challenge someone's beliefs or try to steer them a different direction, but maintaining a level of respect. It's possible to engage in a conversation when you know you're right and you have all this evidence and someone is saying completely other things. It's still possible to try to meet them where they're at, to listen to what they have to say and what is driving these feelings, these conspiracy theories, the Bill Gates and
let's
like, it's fear. People are afraid.
Right.
And
people like this is hard.
You have to empathize. So when you say Venezuela's rigging our elections, right? That's a great spot though. That's a wonderful point in time to say, yeah, I really fear our elections getting messed with too. If you do,
I like that.
I could see how that would be a problem, right? There's ways to say like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying, but I don't necessarily agree with that.
I hear you.
I hear what you're saying. And then change.
You give credit to understanding their perspective, but not condoning or accepting it. The format in which it was kind of necessarily given to you. So it's like, okay, Merz is like, well, yeah, I can see where you might think the world's flat, but I'm not convinced. Or something like that.
Okay.
Where you could say something where you kind of like leave them a pathway to not be, you're not judging them or outright criticizing their opinions.
Well, you have to know where they're coming from is the thing. Why are they saying the earth is flat? Why is it that they believe that? And if you
That's a
listen,
good question.
if you listen to them, they will tell you, because they're more than happy to tell anybody. But if you try to dictate or speak at them, not talk with them, but speak at them or preach to them, right? They shut off. So if what you want to emulate, or if what you want the world around you to be is open, which is what I'm literally hearing you say, Jonny, then you should be that too. It's awfully difficult to have somebody be open to you if you're not open to them, especially in a divisive matter where people are passionate.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, this idea of listening for the underlying interests. So one of my favorite books in grad school was Getting to Yes. It's about like negotiations and the difference between a position and an interest, right? A position is, I believe the earth is flat. I don't believe in vaccines. That's a position. But what are the underlying interests driving to that position? And if you can understand those interests that are driving it, that's where the real conversation can take place. So I think fear is driving a lot of things. This is a really hard time for everybody. And that's real. And people are afraid and they don't know who to trust. And they hear all these conflicting pieces of information. Like, it's confusing. And people are trying to survive. They're trying to make a living. They're trying to provide for their family. They don't have time to do all the research and read all the studies and look at all the data. They're just trying to get by. So when you see the iceberg under the water for these folks, and you try to meet them there and see them as people and assume best intent, like they're just trying to make it in this very scary time, then we can at least approach that conversation with that level of compassion so that we're able to help them feel heard.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's the key.
I mean, and to touch on our earlier points in conversation, come around full circle, you were talking about the lettuce, and it's, I ran out of toilet paper and I started using lettuce leaves, and today was just the tip of the iceberg. Tomorrow remains to be seen.
Wow, they're just getting better and better. Just better and better.
Wow. I do not support that stance.
I cannot support that stance.
That was painful.
Tracy says I always ruin tender moments. It's my superpower. Okay. You asked me if I had superpowers. That's one of them, ruining tender moments. Nothing like relaxing on the couch after a long day of being tense on the couch.
Subtle.
How do you socially distance while around family?
I don't know, Jonny. How?
A high fiber diet.
Oh my gosh.
Wow, that was like the least dirty fart joke you've ever told.
It could be a fart joke, but really it's a shit joke, I think. It could be both. It could be both.
Oh, because you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
The delivery was kind of shitty,
though. What did one novel coronavirus say to the other?
I don't know what.
Oh, the places you'll see.
I don't get it.
Why do they call it a novel coronavirus? It's a long story.
Yeah, sure is.
What's the best way to avoid touching your face? A beer in each hand.
Well, nobody said I had to wear pants.
These jokes are going to put me in ICU. Oh.
What do you call panic buying of sausage and cheese in Germany?
The first case scenario.
Damn, he got that one.
Yep.
Back in my day, You would cough to cover up a fart. Now with COVID-19, you fart to cover up a cough.
Wow.
You know, all these dad jokes are making my brain like the earth. Flat.
You're fired.
Bring it around.
Okay, speaking of conspiracy theories.
Uh-oh.
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait.
God.
I got
Here.
one.
What
Uh-oh.
should you do if you don't understand a coronavirus joke? Be patient.
Still-
God.
Still
I
waiting.
didn't write these.
Like be a patient in a hospital?
It doesn't decide where I'm getting it from. Doesn't
It
explain
doesn't
it.
explain the joke for some reason. I don't get it.
The joke speaks for itself.
Ben only likes jokes that you need to explain. And I don't have
Ben
an
likes jokes that you need a
explanation for that.
thesaurus for is what he likes.
Yeah.
I once watched Ben purposely drop his hot dogs on the ground while we were camping and then eat them after they were covered in dirt and then utter the words camping. After I asked, Ben, what are you doing? And he says, camping.
The dirt gives it like extra protein and it makes it the texture better.
Says the man that the earth is flat.
Does it now?
What?
Oh, wait, that was Josh.
I always take 2 pairs of socks with me when I go golfing in case I get a hole in one.
There you go.
That's just a random dad joke though.
What else do you want?
Still no toilet paper in the stores. They're wiped out and you're out of luck. All right, moving on.
All right. So we actually have a few clips I want to share out from some of our listeners. I think the first one I want to share out is so a friend of ours, Jonny Spazz, Justin Vinsler,
Oh, hey.
out in Hawaii. We've talked about him on the show before. I told the story of how after we were in a band together, and after a gig, we were just outside shooting the breeze, and we heard this car crash off in the distance. And Justin threw his beer down and just took off.
That's Vinny
just
the
took
knife.
off running. He just took off running in the direction of the chaos and jumped onto the freeway and tried to help. And so that just really tells you what kind of person this is. He was a medic and served for the Navy in Iraq.
That's where I met him.
Yeah. And he's a firefighter now in Hawaii. And just a real cool dude, real awesome person. And being in the healthcare world being a first responder himself, I was really curious about so what does he think about this whole debate about vaccines and everything like that? Let's hear from Justin on his take on
Vinny the knife.
sort of anything weird as a first responder that he's observing in the world today.
I guess the only thing that I've seen out there that's really weird is just all of the conspiracy theories about the pandemic and COVID-19 and the vaccine. And I mean, they're just insane, I remember following, InfoWars 15 years ago when it first kind of came out. And, I thought the same thing. I was like, wow, this stuff is incredible. It's so amazing to hear this, stuff coming out that nobody knows about. And, you get trapped in there and you just think it's all truth. And then, after years of, not any of the things that Alex Jones was talking about ever coming true, I finally realized this guy is just full of it, and he's just making money off of these people's desire to learn some truth or, to be a part of some movement that was just bogus. It's just him making money. And the more outlandish it is, the more money he makes. And there's just a ton of startup guys that want to be the next Alex Jones InfoWars, and they're just all spreading this misinformation. And I'm sure a lot of them, actually believe it, but it's just none of it has any common sense. None of it has any basis for truth. And it's really, to me, it's just been really strange to see how pervasive it's been and how it's affected people. I mean, I have really close friends who are just completely bonkers and have just, gone over the deep end when it comes to the conspiracy theories. And it's, it's actually sad. And I just wish people could, see the way that I look at it. The truth is that, these, doctors, nurses, and scientists have, worked so hard to try to ease the blow of the pandemic, and these other people have just been fighting it in the complete opposite direction, and it's made a mess of it.
Yeah. I wish like some people would keep certain thoughts to themselves so I didn't have to hear them. And I think that in a way is agreeing with Justin. It's like, I wish certain people could just not necessarily see the truth as I do, but be able to see past when somebody's selling you snake oil or when they're using you as a means to allocate funds to themselves by any means necessary.
Well, I caught a couple of things I thought were pretty telling in there. The Alex Jones listeners want to learn some truth. And then a little bit later, I wish people could see the way I look at it. So the way he looks at it in his mind is truth. And what he wants is he found his truth, right? And I think that's what he has in common with the Alex Jones listeners or his buddies or whomever it was, is they're both seeking truth. So that's a great place to start. And then how you discover that truth is kind of what he was explaining at the end there. Just after he said, I wish people could see the way I look at it. And then he said, the doctors, the scientists, so on and so forth. So that's where he found his truth. And that's, since they're both looking for truth, that's how you begin the questions and the discussion is, so where do you find your truth then? Well, I listen to Alex Jones and that's it, right? Or whatever it is that people happen to listen to.
Well, he also said, I can't believe people don't know about this kind of stuff. And I think the reason people, and I'm air quoting here, don't know is because what he gives isn't information. It's just a bunch of words talking about things that prey on people's emotions and their attachments and their thought process and their identity. Yeah. So for somebody that was in the military like Justin, who served overseas in pretty rough places as a medic, when somebody says something like, they stole your election and you're not going to keep your country unless you fight like hell, for example, you're preying on someone's beliefs and identities of something. They're not going to question where it's coming from because it makes sense to them on some level. You feel like you can supersede that step or you don't need to take that extra peek behind the veil because it's a trust thing. Because when you run purely on emotion versus strategic thinking or critical thinking, things start to, they don't always work out when you on truth when you're just talking based on emotion. It's more of a reaction. Yeah. And in some cases that can be a visceral reaction or a very powerful negative reaction in terms of people with conflicting ideas on that subject, whatever it may be.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing is that in especially our culture, our society, the American culture, is that the power of a single person's testimony has a lot more credibility and a lot more influence than others would have. And a lot of people will tend to trust a person's testimony more than data.
Which we know, as far as courts go, eyewitness testimony is terrible.
Yeah. It's like the worst kind of evidence there is.
Absolutely. But there are people who will take someone who, let's say, an Alex Jones or say a Donald Trump or any sort of person who speaks, they will have an influence over people because they are speaking to them. And if they bring a passion behind it, others seem to think, well, if they're so passionate, it must be true. And then a negative domino effect happens where, say, for instance, the Alex Jones group, they'll create a conspiracy theory. He'll say something in very vigorous, overt passion, and people
confidence too.
confidence as well. And people will think, well, if he has so much passion and confidence, then it must be true. So then what happens?
Yep.
They go onto a search engine and they'll look up, say, flat earth conspiracy, or to be more relevant, a vaccine conspiracy. And what happens is that you'll have a bunch of articles come up that will give either both sides of the story or just one side. And someone can look at an article talking about 100 things about, say, the vaccines. And only 3 of those 100 things are what they believe in. And they say, see, it says that I'm right. Yeah, but what about the other larger majority of things that don't say that you're right? And they take just what they want to hear. Search engines give you what you want to hear, what you're looking for. If you're looking for a conspiracy theory, you're going to find it. And instead of looking for, say, something that talks about a conspiracy theory and gives both argument points, instead just gives the one, that creates a problem to where people won't want to listen to reasoning, where they'll say, well, I look at articles, and then when you find out what the articles are, there's a huge bias. And there's not just flat out both sides. It's favoring one side or the other. And that creates a, dare I say, toxic point of view.
Yeah, I can. And there's one thing I want to point out too, and it's the where do these things root? Where's the fertile ground in which they lie? And how can smart people, intelligent, respectable people be wrapped into these kind of things? And I would wager that intelligence isn't the leading variable in whether you believe it or buy into a conspiracy theory. I don't think that's the part of it. I think there's a part of the human condition in which we're poised to believe things emotionally first that we are identify with. I mean, you can see it. Like you find solidarity in things that are easy to believe, at least at their face, that you're passionate and emotional about. And when you find a tribe that is perpetuating that, it's real easy to, and here you are, you're one day you're at home with your family doing normal people things, and then next you're storming the U.S. Capitol. I mean, yeah. It's crazy how this belief, how people can buy into, and I understand it because that was me. I was in Alex Jones' group too as well. And I'd hate to say this, but maybe Justin even knew about it because him and I were talking about it at
back in the day.
I feel like I might even be partly responsible for that.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting you say there are really intelligent people. At least let's talk about the vaccine debate. There's a lot of people I have great respect for, who I know are thoughtful, educated, however you want to define intelligence. A lot of people who, like Merz here, who I have a lot of respect for, who just aren't there. And the idea is like, well, let's try to understand that and respect their decisions. And I certainly want to try to influence them a certain direction. But in a lot of the folks who buy into some of these conspiracy theories, they're not stupid people.
No.
But as far as conspiracy theories and how it plays out in the vaccine debate, one theme I'm hearing a lot is this sort of lack of trust of government. And that I think that's a huge, we talk about the interest behind the positions. I think that's a huge driver for a lot of folks because these vaccines are starting to become mandates, right?
So
government mandates.
So I'd like to hit on that. Yeah, that's a huge part of where my skepticism comes in. The pharmaceutical companies spent $4.85 billion lobbying, and that's just what's on record. And I filled out a PDC, which is a public disclosure form for lobbying activities when I was in college. And you put everything on there, but there's stuff that just doesn't get considered. So 4.85 billion is what they spent on paper. I can't imagine all of the other costs that went into those lobbying efforts.
How does that compare to other years, though?
It's been going. It's been
non-pandemic. I mean,
it's
big pharma is.
It's been increasing.
They're the biggest lobbyists by the industry in the United States.
They're also the largest
campaign contributors.
Yeah, And
my point was, is it different than any other year?
it's been
or
growing
any
since
other
2008.
Right. So
Rapidly
I mean,
growing since 2008.
Is that a good place to stand on making a judgment on something? I mean, it's kind of like,
I'm just saying that
sure, yeah,
campaign
absolutely.
contributions affect legislation.
Yep.
Lobbying efforts affect legislation. Now, I'm not saying that there's a grand conspiracy with that. It's not like, oh my gosh, but I am saying that's a lot of money to spend without expecting anything in return. So $4.85 billion is a lot of money to spend without thinking that you're going to get a return on that investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started about big pharma. You know, they take publicly funded research and make it proprietary and price gouge the crap out of us.
And that's right here in Washington.
Damn it, Merz. You got Ben on Twitter.
Well, we're paying double. We're paying twice for these medicines.
I thought it was more than that. I thought it was 4 times as much as any other country on earth that has.
Well, yeah, if you break down the price, but essentially we're
Ben's saying we paid for the
price
research
gouged
at our public universities, our tier, what tier are they? Whatever. At our public universities that do this research. Then Big Pharma.
NIH grants.
They come in and they say, okay, you did this research. Now we funded it, so we own it. Or we donated to the university, so we own it. Or we're just going to take it because under Interstate Commerce Clause or whatever it is, they can take it and then make it their own and then sell it. So we pay for the research and development, and then we end up having to pay for the shareholders' retirement, I guess. I don't know why we pay the second time. But that's.
I mean, we own that research.
Right.
Why are we then price gouged?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we did the research, but then they justify this
capitalism.
I don't know if $4.85 billion that Big Pharma has given to Congress so that they can do it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Unbridled capitalism. Well, so here, I think what Jonny is saying is like, I totally am with you on that, Merz. I think Big Pharma is a scourge on this country. Mm-hmm. But then is that how much of a correlation is between their influence and the whole vaccine movement?
Well, so certainly it leaves a bit. People hear Big Pharma a lot in negative ways. Johnson & Johnson just got done with that lawsuit about whatever their talcum powder, right? I don't know what exactly happened with it, but they just had a lawsuit within the last couple of years for talcum powder. I mean, I saw commercials on, because I only had TV in my room. I only had antenna TV in my room. It's like 2020 and I only had antenna TV. Or it's 2019, I guess. But still, I would watch late night television, go to sleep, and commercials would come on. You know those commercials. And be, hey, if you were affected by this, join our lawsuit. And it was for that talcum Johnson & Johnson thing. So we know that big pharma companies like Johnson & Johnson, who, Jonny, you got that shot, didn't you? Isn't that the vax you got?
Mm-hmm.
So we know Johnson & Johnson had in their records that there was an amount of stuff that wasn't supposed to be there. I can't remember what you call it, in their talcum powder. And whatever wasn't supposed to, it was an acceptable amount. But they never told anybody it was in there.
I think it was heavy metals.
That's what I'm saying. Heavy metal. I'm saying like, what's something
like that?
Yeah, it's just a foreign object, right? It's a foreign substance inside their talcum powder, but it was within acceptable levels. Now, who made those acceptable levels? The FDA. Did Johnson & Johnson ever lobby the FDA to make those levels whatever they may have been or not have been? Oh, yes, absolutely. Johnson & Johnson was part of that discussion with the FDA about the levels of heavy metals in their talcum powder. Now, all I'm saying with that is that's something that just happened recently. That might turn people off to Big Pharma, especially if they're watching late night TV on antenna TV, not Netflix, because if you're older than 40, 50, you might be watching Netflix. There's a good chance, but you might still just be watching regular cable. And if you see those commercials constantly about talcum powder, that can put bad things in your head, like negative thoughts about pharmaceutical companies. You're seeing the ad every night, right? Like I was seeing it constantly. So, and I'm not saying that necessarily influenced where I feel. I think what influenced me the most was I did this play by W.L. Newkirk, and it was called Miss in brackets. And it's about Frances Kelsey Oldham, and she worked for the FDA in the 50s and 60s. And it was about thalidomide, which we're all.
Oh, yeah.
So you've heard of thalidomide. And
the flipper babies.
Yes, it mutated babies before they were born, and sometimes it caused miscarriages.
It was for morning sickness in women that were pregnant, right?
Correct. That's overwhelmingly what it was. It also treats leprosy and is still used today. But I know it sounds weird, but leprosy is still a thing, right? So they treat leprosy with it.
I would hope not.
Well, it is. I mean, I did the research when I did the play. I
thought Jesus cured all that.
So that play was about the FDA, which I played the FDA, a lobbyist for the FDA, or a lobbyist for the big pharma company to the FDA.
Must have been a hard role for you.
Yeah, it was a pretty difficult role for me, actually. It was really weird being like, I'm the drug peddler trying to lobby the FDA, trying to get past this one woman who won't let me. And this was in the 50s. So we know that women in prominent positions had a tougher go of it, right? So anyway, it was a great play. And then COVID hit a month later. After I did the play, COVID hit, right? So I just got done doing this big story about how one person at the FDA stopped thalidomide from killing millions upon millions of babies in the United States, right? Because it killed and mutated or dysmorphed, what do you call it?
It turned them into Aquaman minions.
Yeah, in Germany and the UK, because they used it there for like 10 years or something. And we only had it in a trial basis through the FDA, and there was only one person at the FDA stopping it from going forward. And then guess what? Now we're in a pandemic with emergency use vaccines or emergency use approval on vaccines going forward that made it through the FDA that I just did a play on. Now,
so President Xi unleashed coronavirus on the world so Big Pharma could make money.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is they wanted thalidomide to go through because it came back good on all the tests. And they didn't link the two to birth defects afterwards because it didn't always do that. So it's not some grand conspiracy at all. But I do think that self-interest, rational self-interest, i.e. a drug salesperson like I played in the play, has a rational self-interest to get the drug approved. And since there wasn't any real proof of this, like the tests hadn't been done, the research hadn't been done yet, he was going, where are all the problems? And there wasn't any evidence. But she knew something was wrong with it. So anyway, there's my little story about what I did right before the pandemic hit was a play about the FDA approving something temporarily for doctors to give out, and we still had cases in this country for temporary approval, which, if you look up thalidomide, that is what happened. And fortunately, we had Dr. Frances Kelsey Oldham, and she stopped it from being completely approved, not just for, trial to hand out to a few patients. Though we did hand out over more than 2 million, I think, somewhere around there. 2 million pills, which is a lot of pills to hand out if it's messing up babies.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's clear that, what we put into our bodies, there are unintended consequences sometimes. There are side effects and that's why we do the testing in the trials. And yes, the testing in the trials were sort of fast tracked with these vaccinations. And then I get back to my earlier point that I think COVID, the harms of COVID outweigh the risks of those side effects. And I mean, just looking at how it performs, like 1,500 people, 0.0001% of the 166 million fully vaccinated people died from COVID. 0.0001% have died from COVID who are fully vaxxed. Meanwhile, 7,000 people of fully vaxxed people, about 0.005%, were hospitalized. So it is working. That is undeniable. It is working when it comes to COVID. And that's where I land. And I understand the distrust of government. I despise big pharma. For me, like government's role is to protect the people, is to look out for the people, because they are the entity that is positioned to do that. And government is us, of the people, by the people, for the people. We have this distrust of the very entity that we need to be holding to account so that they can best serve us. And we're not holding government to account in a lot of ways. The fact that we allow industries like big pharma to just be unchecked is a big problem and is a failure of government. But I think when it comes to this vaccine, our angst, to me, seems misplaced. And that, like, this isn't the hill to die on, quite literally, for a lot of the unvaccinated folks. This isn't the hill to die on. There are hills to die on. I mean, let's talk about what we can do with big pharma and how we can regulate those prices. But we're just so busy pointing fingers at each other, right? Which is exactly what our oppressors, if you will, want us to do. We're so busy pointing fingers at each other, we fail to see who's really oppressing us. It's just easy to blame government.
It's that extreme tribalism, man. I think there's a lot there.
Okay, I want to play another clip from Justin. Let's listen.
One of the main hesitations that I hear people talk about when it comes to the vaccine is basically just that it's new and they just don't feel that it's safe yet. And I admit, when it first came out and they were talking about people volunteering for the trials, I even thought to myself, yikes, I don't know if I would want to be that person. But I mean, the more you learn about it, the more you realize it is safe, then people are more likely to want to get it. And it's really about education. But I know there's different groups of, people, different demographics that, they fear the government. And they don't trust it, which I think is kind of BS, because the bottom line is it wasn't the government that created vaccines. These are hardworking professionals that have created these vaccines, over decades, and it's not the government. The government has to roll it out because they are, the only entity able to do that on such a grand scale. But I think there's just a lot of misinformation that's clouding the environment.
I mean, he's got a point.
He does have a point. Yeah. So he talked about in there that, he mentioned that there was, and I think we've also mentioned this as well, that the vaccines, the big three that we have been somewhat rushed, right? I think we can all agree that we were fast tracking, I think is what he said, these vaccines, which when you look at scientific experimentation, and let's face it, it may sound not the friendliest thing, but in some cases, we're still in an experimental phase with these vaccines on a much larger scale, where yes, there was testing and immediate results were looking great. But now, as Merz has pointed out, there are now vaccines where we need boosters. And as I said earlier, that there are people now who they were told one thing and now they're being told another, and now they're questioning, which is a perfectly fine thought process to have, because that can happen in any sort of scenario, in the workplace, in the home environment, what have you. Yeah. And what people need to understand is that these vaccines are still, again, they weren't all 100% approved by the FDA, and that they came out with initial statistics showing one thing, but then, as science tends to do, extended results have changed, and now goalposts are changing. Now we're hearing about, at least with one of them, I hear is just needing a booster. Again, I don't have all the information, and I do apologize that I don't have maybe all the information in front of me. But as far as I know, just one of them does. The others don't currently at this time.
I think that's right.
Yeah, it's just the Pfizer one, I believe.
In the process of it, though.
Right. But that is simply just part of the experiment, the scientific process, where there will be trials. And this is probably the biggest trial that these vaccines are going through, is getting out to the populace. And we're seeing a lot of statistics that are showing that it's working. But now perhaps the half-life, if you will, is fading, which was not expected or perhaps not anticipated, because we were fast-tracking getting these vaccines out. Because I like to kind of say that we are sometimes in a world, and we kind of are really in a world, where we're in that commercial, where that's that one commercial. I forget what it was for, but it's all these people sticking their heads out of their windows and they're saying, "It's my money and I want it now," right? Everybody wants everything done quickly, right? We live in the world of one-day shipping, right? When you order something on Amazon, it shows up.
Sometimes same day if you live near enough.
Yeah, same day. We're going to show up. Like, you see it at 10 o'clock. It could be there at your place between 5 and 8 p.m. at night. It's great. People would want that with everything, especially with a vaccine, because everybody, as we've mentioned here, has what we call COVID fatigue. We're all sick of it. And as a retail employee, I am, insert drill bit here, tired of it. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have to just rush to get something out there, especially when, as we've seen, these vaccines will have some side effects, some worse than others. And with that, though, something to consider is that, that's every single medicine on the planet has a side effect of some form and fashion. And all four of us, let's just put this, let's do a what if scenario, if you could indulge me here. What if all four of us right now had a really bad headache and we all took the same kind of Tylenol, ibuprofen? Our headaches are gone, but there could be a chance that 1 out of 4 of us, or all 4 of us, could have some bad side effect, whatever the case may be. Because whenever you watch, say, a commercial for these medicines, they'll say that your headache's good, but side effects may include go through this long list. Do not take if smoking or pregnant or may become pregnant. There's a reason why, because these things happen. That's why they say that. And
spontaneous explosive diarrhea.
Right. My dad and I, we sometimes make a joke where, you take a medicine for, like, say, an antidepressant or for a headache, and say, "Well, I took this medicine and my arm's now the size of a walnut and my right eye is turning blue and I have a tail growing, but at least my headache's gone." Right. And that's kind of what has happened here with the vaccine, where there have been some instances, again, going back to the personal testimonies, where one person can go out on TikTok or Instagram or whatever and say, "Look what happened when I got the vaccine." Now everybody thinks that's happening, even though it's just one person. And I'd like to, to talk to the people who don't want to get the vaccine, mainly the Pfizer vaccine. If I remember this correctly, Pfizer also makes quite the medication that us guys like to take for certain improvements in the bedroom. And y'all don't have a problem with taking that little blue diamond, but you have a problem with getting a shot in the arm. And yet, here's something for you. They say with that commercial, talk to your doctor if you have this result lasting more than 4 hours. And I will tell you this, I don't know this from personal experience. I just know it. I know it. That if that happens, the process for all 4 of us guys is a living nightmare. It's horrible. It's a horror movie turned up to 11. And I'll say this.
Out of 5.
If I didn't get the vaccine.
11 out of 5.
Yeah, it is absolutely insane. It's not fun. And I'll take a sore arm and maybe a bit of tiredness from a shot more than what happens if...
piece?
Well, it's what happens with that stiff man piece is what I'll say. And it's not... I get chills just thinking about it. It's horrible. So there is a bit of contradiction in some cases. We're more than happy to take these medicines for headaches and for stomach problems and for sexual performance without worrying about the potential concerns that can be especially for some of us, not a fun walk in the park. You're basically walking through Chernobyl and Stalingrad at the same time. Stalingrad, World War II, I should say. So I think people really need to hold off on thinking that it's all bad medicines, and yet we're more than happy to take other kind of medications. And just the fact that the results are changing, that's just part of the scientific experiment. The same thing happened with all these medicines that we take now, where no doubt there was these extended trials where perhaps when Tylenol first came out, everybody thought it was okay, but then there was all these massive side effects, and perhaps maybe the effects don't last as long as they initially thought, but people keep buying it. And that's just unfortunate. That is just part of the scientific process, especially when dealing with a, let's call it, rushed out vaccination distribution.
Okay. Well, I want to play another clip for you from Justin talking about the impact on local health systems. Merz, actually, you mentioned earlier, like, the concern about there being unequal policies across borders and whatnot. Here in Washington, we actually have an issue where Idaho, with very lax vaccination approach, they're flooding Washington hospitals with COVID patients, sending them across the border. And there are a lot of people here on the east side of Washington, like non-COVID patients, who can't get surgeries and get treatment because the COVID patients are just taking up all that space from Idaho.
At the same time, Governor Inslee just asked the federal government to bolster our healthcare workers, like we don't have enough. So I wonder how much of a factor that is in it. Because there's people coming from other states, right? Maybe that's why we don't have the amount of healthcare workers.
Right. So it's interesting to look also how vaccination affects what's happening in our hospitals. And you look at the data, the vast majority of people in the hospital are unvaccinated. So let's hear from Justin.
I think at this point, the vaccinated are pretty fed up with the unvaccinated. I mean, there are people who cannot get the vaccines for legitimate reasons, and that's totally understandable. But for those people who can and choose not to, and then affect their local healthcare systems, and that's just really frustrating. I mean, people in certain parts of the world would give their left testicle to have the vaccines, and yet we're just squandering them here in the U.S. And, I feel like if you're in a community where if you don't get vaccinated and you use all the precautions available to you and you're not going to affect your local healthcare system, then fine. But too many people are overwhelming their systems. And I know here in Hawaii, our system was almost to the tipping point right before we enacted a new mandates, and now it's starting to go down again. So I mean, and if you look at the statistics, I hear people say all kinds of crazy things about, the stats are showing that the unvaccinated are spreading the disease and the unvaccinated are overwhelming the hospitals. I don't know what stats they're talking about, but I can tell you right now here in Hawaii, if you look at the hospital stats, the overwhelming majority of the people in the hospitals are the unvaccinated, and almost 100% of the people in the ICUs are the unvaccinated.
I want to play one more clip. This is actually from my sister, Liz, who's a nurse out in Boston, and she's worked extensively with COVID patients in the ICU. And one thing she's heard from people is questioning, like, is COVID real? And this is her response to that.
Hi, my name is Liz. I've been an ICU nurse for 9 years. I have worked in high acuity ICUs my whole career. But COVID patients are the sickest patients I've ever seen. I was asked once if COVID is real. I was initially thrown off by that question. I stopped to question my own reality. Were those memories not real? The time spent troubleshooting iPads so loved ones could say goodnight to their parent. The strong smell of plastic that body bags have that's so deeply ingrained in my memory. Or the countless times I would go back to work just a few days later to find out the patient had died. We can do everything we're taught to do, We can treat the symptoms according to textbooks, but the virus does whatever it wants. That's the most frustrating part about the virus. It ravages the body, it ravages families, it ravages cities and countries. COVID is definitely real.
Oof.
That's pretty intense. Yeah, and I want to point out something with Justin citing the percentages of people in ICUs with the coronavirus. And I don't, I've heard some people in my own personal experience take that as a judgment, but really it's just someone observing what the numbers are. And if you want to interpret the numbers as facts, that's what I would say. And it's just observing a fact. There shouldn't be an emotional component attached to a fact. It just is, right?
Yeah.
And that's not to put blame on unvaccinated people. It's just like the way I took that was, look, we don't want you to end up here for more than one reason.
Right.
First reason is we don't want you to suffer needlessly. Right. The other reasons could be you could lead that to other things like wasting supplies or unnecessarily using supplies where you otherwise wouldn't need to because they're not unlimited,
Well, resources.
And imagine, right.
Including beds.
Imagine you're losing your grandmother because somebody chose not to get vaccinated and they're on the news saying, I still wouldn't get vaccinated even though I'm in here with a tube down my throat. I mean, has anyone here seen the people that haven't got vaccinated, they're in ICU beds that say they don't regret their decision? Because that to me is like kind of a spit in the face.
I've also heard a lot of people say that COVID is real. I wish I would have.
I'm just I'm not saying there's not that. I'm just making the point. Imagine being in a position where you lost a loved one and those people are in those specific beds where you lost a loved one. I'm sure it's happened at some point. It's just, to me, it's kind of a thoughtless thing, and that's a way to perceive it. Not calling unvaccinated people thoughtless. It's not what I mean to say. Just that when somebody, I agree with Ben, or I forget who said it. One of us said it here. It's like, we're not here to convince someone to get it. We're here to talk about it. I'm not in the business of convincing, but there's a thought experiment you can do there to try and put yourself in the shoes of somebody else. And I think that's where when I say thoughtless, it's not that people intend to be pernicious or negative or demeaning to anybody else when they say their freedoms are being infringed by not getting vaccinated or by being vaccinated or not wanting to be because their freedoms are being infringed. It's just something to think about. It's like, wow, there's a lot of nuance there.
Well, freedoms being infringed, the Supreme Court did rule like more than 100 years ago that, I think it was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, if a community required a smallpox vaccine, or I think it was a vaccine, then everybody in the community had to get it.
Yeah, vaccine mandates aren't new.
Yeah, this is nothing new.
They're almost as old as vaccines themselves.
The freedom point, and Merz, you were talking about this, another conversation. People don't like to be told what to do, right?
No.
The mandates are hard for people to swallow. They see that as government overreach. I think the flip side of that is the saying that your right to swing your arm ends at the tip of my nose.
Something like that, yeah. My rights start where your rights stop. There's several ways to say it.
Right. And so thinking about like the act of not vaccinating can actually harm other people. Right. And so, okay, you know, we're talking about your rights to not, you in general, your rights to not get vaccinated. What about my rights to not get COVID? Right. That's the idea.
Well, I kind of liked what Justin, that's your buddy from Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
He said people would give their left testicle in other countries to get it. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But then he followed up with, if you follow the guidelines, the social distancing, masks, so on and so forth, fine if you're not a burden to the community or the healthcare systems, which I follow all of those. There's no, you're muzzling my free speech by making me wear a mask. I don't have anything like that. No, social distancing or quarantining. I quarantined for 10 days like I was supposed to, or 12. I think I did it a couple extra days after I lost my fever. So I'm following the other guidelines and mandates and whatnot, which is what Justin had touched on. As far as is COVID real, which is what Liz was saying, yeah, COVID's real. Like I just got into a big discussion this summer about that with somebody who needed some help with something. And I said, well, are people going to wear masks? Because there's going to be a big gathering. And, there are health concerns in my own family. So I want to know how safe this is going to be for me to come and give you a hand. And they lit me up, oh, it's not even real. How can you believe that? This is all just a big conspiracy. There's no reason to get it. It's just the flu or a cold. It's the same as it always has been. And I lit them up back, of course, and said, well, do you believe we landed on the moon? Do you think that the Holocaust is real? Right?
You engaged.
Listen, I think that things are real. Like this isn't a big grand conspiracy. It'd be very difficult to pull off if it was. So yeah, COVID's real. I think the how we're addressing it is not working to the extent that I had hoped that it would.
Yeah.
Fair
I just
enough.
want to point out that vaccine mandates are super old. So even George Washington mandated that his soldiers get vaccinated against smallpox. I mean, that's like 105 years before electricity was put into use. I mean, think about that for a second. Like, I think people question the effectiveness of vaccines. Well, vaccines all work in that they do the same type of thing, right? I mean,
well,
I think we understand that. I think some people question the science behind it, which is fair because, again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a virologist. I don't really understand viruses all that well, other than any more than your average person, I would say. But there's something about people's own thought process outweighing what's been proven elsewhere, and they don't trust the process that they don't even know about, which to me seems a little like I'm of the stance that I know I don't understand the whole process. I don't really need to. I've decided that the cost outweighs the...
Well, I think that's an interesting piece that you and Ben keep saying, Johnny, is I've got this cost analysis, right?
Right.
So you've looked at some numbers and your cost analysis is X, Y, Z. Can somebody else's cost analysis be, or risk to benefit be different than that? Could they come to a different conclusion, but you just don't accept that different conclusion?
I don't think it's about the conclusion. I think it's about the process.
The process
of getting that conclusion. So it's not about your truth versus my truth. I think there's only the truth. I don't think there is I think there is a such thing as a personal truth, but I don't think that's as valuable as what the truth is and how we arrive at that truth, and that's where it becomes a part of identity, I think. And that's the part where people start getting combative with each other.
Yeah.
It's my opinion. I don't know if that's what it is. It's just how I feel about that specific thing.
At the end of the day, like I respect another person's right to choose, right to have their own conclusions, right? And all I can do is try to put out my perspectives, and I let go of it after that. And I'm not, my goal isn't to change minds. My goal is to just offer some more context for informed decision making. Like that's, if I can achieve that, then I feel good about it. But I think we want to try to wrap up this discussion. The conversation continues, but I wanted to go back to that Facebook thread I mentioned earlier, the one where someone called the unvaccinated ignorant and uneducated. And a good friend of mine from back in the day, I worked at the newspaper with him. I went to college with him. Someone I respect quite a bit. He's unvaccinated. He doesn't feel like he needs it. And he kind of, in that same Facebook thread, he kind of got into it with another of my friends. And by the end of that conversation, he said something that really I greatly appreciated. And he said, I can't remember anyone, Facebook or government or otherwise, actually asking why with no judgments attached to it. You are what is right in the world. So that just made me feel real good. I don't think the Facebook thread changed anyone's minds or whatever, but he at least knew that I cared, that I was asking and I wanted to listen, and I did. And to me, that's a win. And Merz, I don't want to put you on the spot. I also don't want you to feel like you're the spokesperson for the unvaccinated.
I'm certainly not. I have my reasons, and I think they differ vastly and widely from a lot of other folks.
Absolutely. But I'd be curious to hear your reflections after this conversation, and and we can try to wrap this up.
Do you know what goes great with Corona?
Lyme
Disease.
Oh goodness.
Ooh.
I did want to say, I did ask one of my friends, or I asked several people, but one of them had a good thing to say. They said, what's fascinating to me is the amount of healthcare professionals that are not getting the vaccine and are risking losing their jobs. And those people certainly are educated. So why are some of them not getting vaccinated? I find that fascinating as well.
Well, I was going to ask my mom if the offer to slap me into next year still stands.
Oh, yeah. Just get this year over with. Wait till January 1st to have her do it.
Knock, knock.
No.
Knock, knock.
Get 6 feet away from my door and put a mask on. I'm not opening it.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Go home. You're supposed to be social distancing.
Oh my gosh, I am home and you're nowhere near me.
That's not true. I live in your mind.
Don't you wish you rented space there? It's not very expensive.
It's timeshare.
Time to own. Rent to own.
Well, yeah, Merz, on the healthcare thing, I mean, you take any group of people and you're going to have a spectrum of people and where they fall in on a given issue. We heard from a couple frontline folks here on the show, but whatever those doctors and nurses, whatever their reasons are to get unvaccinated, I'm sure they've thought it through, and I respect them for their decision and don't really know what else to say to that. That's their choice, and I hope that they are researched and have weighed the pros and cons and done their cost-benefit analysis. But I think I would just like to leave it with the message of, I am hopeful that we can get as many folks vaccinated as we can. It's our surest path out of this mess. And to those who are vaccinated, please lead with compassion, lead with curiosity, to just be curious, to try to understand what are people's hesitations, and to just respect each other and have real conversations, and instead of it being divisiveness. So those are my parting words.
I like it.
Final words.
Butt cheeks.
Yeah.
Oh,
Final words from me. I'll say that a key to true strength is to not be like your enemy. So in this case, to not be aggravating, to not be demonizing, to be the opposite of that, to show that form of true strength of compassion and understanding and stoicism, to not let the minor things change who you are, to still hold true to what defines you, regardless of the situation you are currently in. And since we're all in this situation together, hence the saying everyone said in the beginning, we're all in this together. It really doesn't matter in the end, vaccinated or not, red, white, or otherwise, or red or blue, the otherwise, or if you have a God or not. We're all in this together. And as long as we're able to find a way to coexist while maintaining a safety for our species, I think is what truly matters the most.
I would say my parting words are actually the biggest lie ever told is that it's not that simple. That's an all-encompassing statement for when we find ourselves making excuses for why we can't do things.
Mine is curiosity and courage. So lead with compassion. Allow that to influence your curiosity because you do care about the person. And then have the courage to do both of those genuinely.
And I have just one more. I'm going to take a little bit of a lyric that I think really rings true in that some things in life are bad. They can really make you sad. Other things just make you swear and curse. When you're chewing on life's gristle, don't grumble, give a whistle, and this will help things turn out for the best. And always look on the bright side of life. There we go.
Hey.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, my piano's not on.
So I've been talking a lot about vaccines and how it can really be life and death for people and how this is an incredibly complicated issue and that we shouldn't judge and attack people who don't get vaccinated. But we should continue to really encourage them to do it and dialogue with folks about it. And this discussion has just got me thinking deep thoughts. And I'll be honest here, fellas. I've been holding this in for this entire discussion here, and I don't know how you're going to take this, and frankly, I'm worried about it. I have to admit, guys, I just need to get it off my chest.
You know, Merz, we talk a lot on this show about the need to give ourselves permission to be vulnerable with each other. I mean, don't be vulnerable for the sake of being vulnerable, but if you have something to say and you're worried you'll like come off as weak or whatever, well, true strength is about saying it anyways, because that's how we build stronger connections with each other, which are really like the building blocks of stronger communities, which means we keep each other safe and help each other to new opportunities. So Merz, thank you for being so willing to open up to us and to speak your truth. You should consider this really a safe space. So what's troubling you, my friend?
Well, how do you treat a sick lemon?
God damn it. Frickin' Merz. You got us again.
Lemonade.
There it is. There it is.
Oh, wow. Merz got us again.
And I really appreciate that, helping me be confident there because I still don't own a power drill. So I'm not sure if I'm a real grown-up man in his 40s yet or not.
Well, maybe I can pass you mine like Ben passed me his computer. You see if I
You got this, Merz. You got this. You can borrow our drills anytime. Well, I wonder if Square 50's guy ever got that vaccine.
Well, Benny, my boy, after doing some serious research, I'm now so excited about vaccines that I've decided to launch my own pharmaceutical company focused on administering these shots. My company is called Richard's Pricks. Come get yours today.
Oh my gosh.
You are a badass.
Oh,
So many
Richard.
levels.
Will he ever learn? Anyways, that'll do it for us. Any final words, fellas?
Butt cheeks.
Cheeky.
Boy.
Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time. Get the shot. Bye-bye. Get that shot.
Cool. We did it.
That's not true. I live in your mind.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, Josh.
Ow.
Cheese.
Yeah.
Cheese. 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 I love string cheese.
You can do it!
Do it! Do it! Do it! Do it!
Well, nobody said I had to wear pants. Nobody.
I cannot support that stance.
Hey, do you like pina coladas? What? Y'all getting caught in the rain? What? If you got half a brain,
What?
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 Oh, no!
All right, fellas. Good
I already
stuff.
did my catchphrases.
We did it.
Made your monkey dance.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
All right.
Thanks for listening to episode 9 of Sexy Dad Jokes. Please like and subscribe and visit sexydadjokes.com and get some awesome t-shirts, mugs, and other merch that'll be sure to get people talking. Celebrity characters depicted in the show are not affiliated with Sexy Dad Jokes. Materials used in this episode are for criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and or research. Until next time, all right.